Hello aspirants, welcome to another session of the daily newspaper analysis. This video is brought to you by the Gurudev Academy. These are the topics that we are going to look at. Firstly, we are going to look at the editorial that has come up heading the G20 and the new daily choices. Firstly, what is the author trying to say here? The author is trying to say that since G20 summit that is going to happen next year, it is a good opportunity for India to showcase some of its important aspects, as well as this G20 platform can be used as a platform for us to showcase to the world that how much sovereign we are and how much of economic competence India has here. Okay, so when we move ahead, so firstly we look at the context here. Context, that is the recent summit that is going to happen in India. So see, the 2022 summit is going to happen in Indonesia, that is in Bali. After that, G20 presidency will be given to India and India will be the president here. Fine. So when we look at the importance of G20, okay, what is the importance of G20? See, G20 is a organization which is comprising of both the developed as well as the developing countries. Fine. G20 is one of the organization which handles the members here, the members of G20 countries, which handle around 80% of the global trade, as well as they comprises around 70 to 80% of the total population. Fine. So G20, that is why it is a very powerful organization. G20 is an economic organization. Every year when we see the summit of this organization happening, what are the main important decisions that have taken up? The decisions are related to your economic events, as well as some of the important global events that are in news. Fine. So this is the power of G20, and for such G20 summit to be happening in India is a very big achievement, because see, G20 is not only made up of your developing countries, as well as some of the other major countries, major global powers, like you have US, Russia, China. You also have some of the international organization representing the G20 here. Like we have your European Union as well, which is sitting in the G20. Fine. So that is why G20 is very important. And what is the present condition? When we look at what is the present condition of G20 here, the G20 here, what is the thing is that the G20 is going through a lot of existential crisis here, because the world is in turmoil due to the pandemic, due to the recent global war, global implication of the war that is happening in Ukraine and Russia. That is why G20 is not being able to find its place in this chaotic world for at present. That is why there is a lot of existential crisis, and that has been seen in the governmental level as well. When we are having this Bali summit that is going to happen in November of G20, we are hearing the news that some of these international leaders, they are not going to attend this meet here, and this is going to be a lot of implications on the G20. So that is why it becomes a very complicated task of the president here. That is why the presidency of India next year is very critical, and it has to be seen how the rivaling countries like rivaling countries like your US, Russia and China are going to sit on the same table and discuss the global issues. Fine. So that is why the task of presidency is very complicated. But not everything is gloom. Okay, there are some positive points as well that India can look on. So when this G20 summit will start, there are three motivations that the author talks here, which are very important. These are the three agendas that India should be working on. That is promoting India's national interest at this global level. See, this is a very global level, globally important forum here, which discusses mainly economic issues. So India can promote what is its national interest, what type of economy it is expecting in return from the global community here. Nextly, leaving a mark on G20, because see, this is the first time that a G20 summit is happening. The G20 summit is not only the meeting of the government heads here. There are so many 200 plus informal meetings that are going to happen between different diplomats, between different leaders, foreign ministries and all of these G20 countries, which are going to discuss different issues, as well as come together on a similar agenda. Okay, so when the G20 is going to be adopting agenda here, it becomes very important for India to come out with a better agenda, so that it leaves a mark in the history of G20. Thirdly, we are talking about maintaining primacy. That is, India has to showcase to the world that they are still a prime contender when it comes to your global geopolitics as well as geoeconomics. India has to realize that geopolitics is the main thing that is influencing your geoeconomics. That is why India has to maintain its primacy. Right? So when we look at the article, the editor next he says that the objectives of the three objectives that India wants to achieve, they have to be achieved by these four ideas. So what are the four ideas here? Firstly, they are talking about opportunity of branding India's achievement. That is, India has been making lately a lot of achievements like your COVID vaccinations. Okay, it has been exporting vaccines here, as well as what it is trying to do. India has been adopting a lot of renewable energy transition. We have seen that recently the target, okay, some of the important environmental targets India has been achieving at a rapid pace. Okay, we have a lot of unicorns when it comes to a startup ecosystem, right? And also India has been a fast growing economy. So these are some of the achievements that India has been making, and India can use the G20 platform to showcase or highlight India's achievement and promote India's brand here, right? So next idea is your four democracies. See, Indonesia, India, Brazil and South Africa will be having the presidency of G20 for the next 4 years, that is starting from 2021 to 2025. And all these four major countries that we talk about, they represent something called as Global South. Okay. They represent the Global South here. What is Global South? They are your emerging economies, okay, emerging economies as well as developing economies. Okay, developing economies. Fine. So the Global South is represented by this. Then what is the benefit of this is that these four nations here can project, okay, the requirements of the Global South. We have always had this tussle in G20, which has been always led by the developing countries. The agenda have been set in this G20 suiting the developed countries. So this is the achievement for these four powerful democracies, four powerful economic players. Since they have the presidency for the next 4 years, they can determine what is important for the Global South here, okay, and they can project themselves as the leader of this Global South countries. Then we look at IPSA here. IPSA is your grouping which consists of India, Brazil and South Africa. Okay, so these are the three countries. So IPSA, when you look at these three countries, this is one of the oldest groupings of these three countries. IPSA have not had any political turmoil between them. There has been no political tension between these countries. So these three countries again can work together and can project themselves as the leader of the new era that is going to be of the Global South. Okay, this is another idea. Lastly, here the author talks about demonstrating India as the chief global diplomat. That is, as we have seen earlier, that we are heading towards something called as your tripolar world. Okay, so one tripolar world where India is going to be the member of this tripolar nations. Fine. So India being projected as a third world country here, it becomes important for India to showcase itself that it can be a leader of this third world countries, as well as it can be a chief diplomat. Okay, it can act as a diplomat between some of the important international crises that are going on here. Along with this, the author highlights that the G20 right now is going through a crisis where the multidimensional, multilateral groupings are being questioned, and G20 being a multilateral grouping here, it becomes important that India lifts G20 back to its primacy. It is important to show to the world that G20 is an important organization, is what the author trying to say here. Right? So moving ahead. So we have this another article here making out a case for another UBI. Okay, UBI in India. Here what the author is talking about something called as social security. Okay. The overall intention of this article is to show the importance of social security and what types of social security should be provided. Firstly, when we look at social security, what social security is? Social security mainly, it is social security here, it mainly provides three kinds of securities, that is your food security, health security, as well as your income security. Fine. So this is what is social security. But why is social security important? Okay, so the importance of social security became important during the time of pandemic. It showed us that what is the importance of a food security, what is the importance of a health security, what is the importance of a insurance security. Security here that is provided through the governmental schemes of the central as well as the state governments here. Fine. So that is your social security. The author further talks about three types of social safety nets, that is your positive safety net, active safety net, as well as proactive safety net. Right? Before we understand these three safety nets, you have to understand one thing, that is your two lines of income. Okay. So first line is your basic wages. Okay, basic wages means these wages are enough to fulfill the basic amenities. basic amenities, that is your food, shelter and clothing. Okay, that is your basic wages. Next, on the line 2, we have critical surviving line. That is, critical surviving line means the person here, it is finding it very hard to fulfill his basic amenities. He does not have enough income to fulfill the basic requirements of life, like your food, shelter and clothing. Right? So during pandemic, what happened is there was decrease in wages. There was decrease in the income of your poor and the needy. And what was the result? The result was that people started falling from this line, that is basic wages line, to the critical surviving line here. Okay, so these are the things that happened. But here what the author mentions is that to provide for social safety for these two line people here, there are three types of social safety net. That is a positive safety net. Positive safety net, it is that if a person is falling from line 1 to line 2, it makes sure that the person does not go below. Okay, he does not go further below, that he is protected when he comes to this line 2 only, that is from basic to critical saving lines. Then you have active safety lines, active safety net. Active safety net is if a person is falling from line 1, a social security is provided such that it acts like a trampoline. Okay, it acts like a trampoline, and this social security scheme, it will allow the person who is going down from this wages line, he bounces and he reaches back to the line 1 again. Okay, so that is your active safety net. Then you have proactive safety net. Proactive safety net, it is such kind of a scheme. If a person is falling from the line 1, the social security scheme provides him so much support that he not only returns to the line 1, he moves further north. Okay, so that is your proactive safety net. Fine. After this, he talks about what are the different types of schemes that are there in these three safety nets. Firstly, he talks about positive safety net. Positive safety net are mainly a social assistance program. These social assistance program are mainly in those economies which have income vulnerability. Okay, so in those countries we have this positive safety net. Next, we have active safety net. Active safety net, as I told again, it acts like a trampoline. It bounces a person back to his line 1, that is basic income. And for that scheme, the safety net needs more budget than your positive safety net here. Then we have proactive safety net. Proactive safety net, as I've told you, if he is falling from line 1, the scheme supports the person such that he bounces not only the first line, he moves further north of your income level. So this is most desired of the safety net, but this is very costly. Okay, this is the very costly. Next, what the author is saying is that the person who are south of the line, that is they are moving below the line, they need more of the social assistance, and the person who are at the northern end, that is who have high income, they need what? Voluntary insurance. Okay, voluntary insurance. Then when we look at the social security, the type of social securities, we have three types of social securities. That is your food security, health security, income security. Fine. So all these three securities are being provided under the social security, and the government here has been implementing a lot of schemes to provide all these securities. Like for food security, we have your NFSA Act 2013 that was passed, that is your National Food Security Act, which provides for hot cooked meal. As well as when it comes to health, we have Ayushman Bharat. When it comes to when it comes to income, we have income schemes from both the central government as well as the state government in informal sector as well as in your formal sector. Fine. But out of all this, the income security, this is hard to provide because firstly, it puts a lot of pressure on the financial status of the government here, as well as the main problem with your income security is the identification of the proper and the right beneficiaries. Fine. So here, lastly, the author advocates that instead of providing for universal basic income, what should be provided is universal basic insurance. Why? Because income, there will be the insurance penetration will increase. Okay, the insurance penetration is per premium per GDP. It is very low in India compared to other countries. That is why the author is arguing that by providing universal basic insurance penetration will increase. As well as he is saying that the beneficiary identification will be very easy, but since we have the GSTN network that has been established, it gives the accurate picture of the informal sector. So here is why the author argues that the UBI, that is universal basic insurance, should be promoted and implemented. Okay, moving ahead, So the next article, it talks about the Supreme Court asked the center to expand food security coverage. Okay, so what is the author trying to say here is that Supreme Court recently has asked the center to expand the coverage of your food security mission, that is your National Food Security Act. See, the beneficiaries under National Food Security Act are identified according to the 2011 census, and the Supreme Court here feels that many of the beneficiaries are being left out due to the difference in the census data between 2011 as well as 2022. So the Supreme Court has asked the center to expand the food security coverage. Firstly, you have to understand what is food security. Food security means availability and affordability. Okay, here what the government is trying to establish is there has to be availability of the food resources as well as affordability of the food resources. That is why the availability is covered by your MSP program through and distributed through your PDS shops. Okay, and affordability is by subsidized grain rates. Subsidized grains. Fine. So when we look at what are the benefits that are provided under your National Food Security Act, the National Food Security Act firstly recognizes two types of households, that is priority households. Priority households are those households that fall in your BPL category, that is the below poverty line category. Then we have Antyodaya Anna Yojana. Antyodaya Anna families are those families which are poorest of poor. Okay, so here the priority households, that your BPL families, they get 5 kgs of food grains at subsidized prices per person per month. Okay, it is per person per month, not per month per family here. Please look at it. Then when we look at Antyodaya Yojana, here the poorest of the poor beneficiary, he gets how much? He or she gets 35 kilos of food grains at subsidized prices per family per month. Okay, please remember, priority households per person, Antyodaya Yojana here per family it is. Okay, then what are the other benefits that is provided? The other benefit is provided for your lactating as well as pregnant women. Lactating and pregnant women are getting rupees 6,000 in installments, as well as Anganwadis and schools. Okay, they are getting your hot cooked meal. Okay, so these are some of the benefits as well as the beneficiaries of your National Food Security Act. This was passed in 2013. Moving ahead, so wind power addition to peak by 2024. So what is the report say here? The report that is published by your Global Wind Energy Council and your MEO. Okay, so these are the consulting firm that specializes in renewable energy. What they are saying is that in 2024, the wind projects and the wind energy that is generated by India, it will peak at 2024, and after that it will start to fall. Okay, so this is the report, and this is a very concerning report. This is a report that the government should look into very seriously. But when we look at the renewable energy targets that India has, by 2020, India aims to generate half of its electricity from non-fossil fuels, as well as it aims to generate 60 gigawatt of wind power by 2022. But what is the present scenario? The present scenario is, out of the 60 gigawatt of the wind power that India had to develop by 2022, India has just developed around 40 gigawatt. Okay, so there has been efforts. The efforts have been fast-paced now. The Ministry of Renewable Energy, as well as your other departments like your DISCOMs and all. Okay, so they are trying to achieve the goal of 60 gigawatt by 2022. It has to be seen whether this target will be completed. Fine. So that's it. That's it from today's video. You can follow us on these social media handles. You can follow on YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, as well as on Facebook. Thank you. Hello aspirants. Welcome to another session of the daily newspaper analysis. This video is brought to you by the Gurudev Academy. These are the topics that we are going to look at. Firstly, we are going to look at the front page writing which has come, which says that citing border pact, China objects to India-US drill. What is the issue here? The issue here is that in few days, we are going to have something called as Yudh Abhyas. Yudh Abhyas is a military exercise that is being conducted between India and US frequently. Okay, so this year this Yudh Abhyas is going to happen in Uttarakhand, which is in a place which is 100 kilometers near to the LAC, right? So what the Chinese government is saying is, Chinese government is opposing this military exercise, saying that it violates two important border agreements between India and China, that is your 1993 agreement as well as your 1996 agreement. Okay, so the agreement of 1993, what it says is that upon being cautioned by the other side, they shall immediately pull back to the side of the LAC. That is, if any person crosses the LAC, then upon caution, the person has to move back to the where he belongs to. Okay, if Indian crosses the LAC, yes, if upon the caution of Chinese, they have to come back. But when we look at the Chinese behavior in the recent times, that we saw the conflict that is in Galwan or as well as your Pangong. So here the China has not done this. On the contrary, what it is trying to do, once it has entered our territory, it has started stationing its troops as well as it is trying to build some of its infrastructure here. Fine. So Chinese itself is not abiding by this 1993 agreement. It is asking us to abide by the agreement. Nextly, when we look at 1996 agreement, the 1996 agreement says that neither side shall open fire or conduct blast operation within 2 kilometers of the LAC. Right? It stays within 2 kilometers of the LAC. But where is the Yuddha Abhyas happening? It is happening 100 kilometers away from the LAC. Right? So the Chinese government is again showing its hypocrisy here. Okay. So even in this 1996 agreement, that is why when we had the conflict in Galwan Valley, there was no bullets fired because of the 1996 agreement. Right? So these are some of the issues that have been discussed. The Chinese keep opposing this, but India will still go on with the military exercise. That is Yuddha Abhyas with US here. Next, we have the Supreme Court to review the PMLA order on two aspects. That is your recently the Supreme Court upheld the verdict it had given regarding your Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Okay, it said that all the provisions of the PMLA Act, they are constitutionally valid, and the Supreme Court decided not to squash any of it. But here are two aspects that have been come in contention. We have been seeing from week. Okay, many editors are writing the editorials mainly regarding these two provisions. That is, firstly is your ECIR report. Okay, that is your enforcement case information report, as well as your burden of proof. Okay, burden of proof. So ECIR report, it is the report that has like an FIR, it is published, it is written, but what is the difference between a FIR and a ECIR is that the FIR copy is provided for the accused, but the ECIR is not provided for the accused. Hence, the accused will never know for what he is being punished or for what the accusations are. Nextly is your burden of proof. The burden of proof here, so when it is a normal case, it falls on your enforcement agencies. Okay, like the police have to provide a proof that this person has to be arrested. But here under your PMLA, that is your Prevention of Money Laundering Act, the burden of the proof falls on the guilty person. Until he has enough proof to show that he is not guilty here, he is being determined as guilty and is being punished. Okay, so these are the two things which violate some of the criminal justice, your rule of law, as well as it violates some of your fundamental rights like your Article 20 and all. That is why the Supreme Court here has decided to review only these two aspects of the PMLA Act. Okay, then moving ahead, so labor code empowers workers, says the PM. See, what is the issue here? The contention, the context is that we have a national labor conference that is being held at Tirupati. Sorry, there is we have the national labor conference that is being held in Tirupati, and this labor conference it is being attended by the Prime Minister here. Here he has said that the present government has made a lot of reforms and taken out the slavery out of the labor sector, as well as recently the labor code, the new labor code that has been launched, it has simplified the complex labor laws here. So what has been done when it comes to labor code here? See, we had few of the labor acts as well as labor rules that were from pre-independence as well. Okay, the rules were not changed and all, and the rules were very complicated as well as redundant. They were not in relevance with the present times, present economic times. That is what the government. That is why the government decided that whatever the 24 labor laws we have, okay, 24 labor laws, whatever are they, the government here has codified them into 4 simple laws. Okay? 4 simple laws here. So it is based on the condition of work, it is based on wages and remuneration, it is based on social security, as well as employment and security and industrial relation. Okay, on these 4 codes, all the 24 laws have been included now. Then the Prime Minister here talked something about the for industrial revolution. Okay, so the new labor code have been implemented so that they adopt to the fourth industrial revolution that we are seeing now. So when we look at it, when we look at the different generation of revolution, the first revolution was mainly happening in your industrial revolution, okay, that happened in Britain in your 1700s. Okay, the whatever the development of steam power, water power, mechanization that you saw, it was your first industrial revolution where machines started coming, and where they were doing the labor, all the labor that was previously done by man, that was done by machines here. Then we have the second industrial revolution where there was mass production and electricity. Okay, mass production as well as electric connection was given to every homes. Then we have third industrial revolution where we have IT revolution. Okay, IT revolution that you saw in the previous times, that is the rise of BPO sector and all. Okay, rise of software sector and all. That is your third industrial revolution. Now what we are seeing is your fourth industrial revolution, that is your cyber physical systems. The cyber physical system comprises of your IoT, big data. Okay, IoT, again Internet of Things, that is every physical system is now connected with the internet facility. Like if you want to turn off a light, if you want to switch on AC or anything, okay, so you can do it with your mobile devices. That is your Internet of Things. Then you have big data by collecting all the data that is available in the market. Okay, products are designed. So this is your big data. So whatever industrial revolution that we are seeing now, the fourth one is your cyber physical system. Another thing that was mentioned by the Prime Minister in his speech is your emergency credit line guarantee scheme. Okay, so this emergency credit line guarantee scheme, this was established under your Atmanirbhar package that was announced during a pandemic time of 2020. What is the intention here is that ECL, this establishes a fund. Okay, it is a fund where banks, okay, where banks invest amount, and this amount is given as loans. Okay, it is given as loans to MSMEs as well as NBFCs. Okay, MSMEs as well as NBFCs. And who guarantees this loan? The loan is guaranteed by a National Credit Guarantee Trustee Company. Okay, they guarantee National Credit Guarantee Trustee Company. They guarantee it. Fine. So why this has been in news again is that recently, few days back, the government has infused more fund in it. That is 50,000 crore of fund is given to this to this scheme again. Okay, please remember it was launched in 2020. These are the important points that have been mentioned by your Prime Minister. Next, we have aircraft carrier Vikrant to be commissioned on September 2. See, India has 2 aircraft carrier for now. Okay, the another aircraft carrier that we have is Vikramaditya. INS Vikramaditya, this has been borrowed from Russia. Okay, so now that we are seeing INS Vikrant is India's first indigenous aircraft carrier. Okay, it is India's first indigenous aircraft carrier. When we look at Vikrant, this is your Vikrant here, and this will be having your runways, it will be having helipads, it will be having weapons. Okay, ballistic missiles will be provided with, nuclear ballistic missiles can be provided with this, like your BrahMos and all. Fine. So these are some of the equipments. The details of the weaponry and the ammunition will be clear once the ship will be commissioned. So once it is commissioned, once the details are out, we'll look at it again. Okay. Then moving ahead, so this is one of the small news in brief that has come. I hope you don't miss the in brief. Sometimes they are very important. Fine. So here what we are talking is Boeing 787 exempted from Gagan till 2025. Okay, the Boeing aircraft 787, it is being exempted from the Gagan system till 2025. Firstly, what is Gagan? Okay, Gagan is your GPS assisted. Okay, it is GPS aided geo augmented navigation. Okay, it is GPS aided geo augmented navigation. This Gagan system is being jointly developed by your ISRO as well as AAI, that is Airport Authority of India. So with the help of the GPS system here, the planes are provided with the best navigational system. Okay, that is your Gagan here. See, India is the 4th country to have such system. We have other systems like we have in US, that is WAAS. Then you have one in European Union, that is your IGNOS. Then you have your Japan, okay, that is MSAS. So India will be the 4th country to have such system. Okay, it is not new. It has been launched in 2017 only. Okay. Then moving ahead, there is when you look at Gagan, you have to also look at IR and SS, like how we have GPS. Okay, GPS is of US. Okay, US provides GPS facility. India is also trying to develop its own navigational system, that is IRNSS. Okay, IRNSS, it provides for two types of services, that is your SPS. Okay, it provides for SPS as well as RS. SPS is standard positioning service. This SPS can be used by all the citizens of India, all the residents of India can use the SPS. When it comes to restricted service, this restricted service is only for security as well as military agencies. Okay, it provides for more accuracy. Okay, the restricted services. When we look at the overall structure of your IRNSS, IRNSS has 3 satellites which are in geostationary Earth orbit. Okay, we have 3 satellites here which are in geostationary orbit, and 4 of them are in the geosynchronous orbit. Fine. So the IRNS is the constellation of 7 satellites, where 4 of them are in your geosynchronous orbit and 3 are in your geostationary orbit. Fine. So again, it provides for the same applications like every navigational satellite provides. It provides for your terrestrial, aerial and marine navigation, disaster management, vehicle tracking, okay, precise mapping, terrestrial navigation for hikers, travelers and all, as well as visual and voice navigation for drivers. Fine. So these are some of the things that have been provided under IRNSS. Okay, so that's it from today's video. You can follow us on these social media handles. You can follow on YouTube, Telegram, Instagram as well as on Facebook. Thank you.